Convergent evolution. This is going to be our subject for tonight on revolution against evolution. Welcome to Revolution Against Evolution. I'm your host, Doug Sharp.
And I'm your co-host, Rich Gear, here as well. And Doug, I guess the first question out of the box would be, what is convergent evolution?
Well, this is what I call a made-up story, which I think evolution is throughout in general, but it is an explanation, ad hoc explanation for why you find similar mechanisms in unrelated organisms. And
Okay.
so we're going to bring up a few of the examples here, and I was looking at an article of there's NIH, I think, is a organization that put this particular article out, and that's uh, that's an evolutionist website, and it says that convergent evolution occurs when organisms that aren't closely related evolve similar features or behaviors, often as solutions to the same problems. The process can result in matching body shapes, color patterns, or abilities. And it says in convergent evolution, two organisms look or behave in a very similar way, even though they are distant related. This means they independently evolved those similarities rather than inheriting them from a common ancestor.
And of course, Doug, the initial thing is they just assume the fact of evolution. And
Mhm.
so they don't explain anything really. They're just saying, here's what we observe. Because evolution is true, they're going to try to give you explanations as to why and how that could have occurred. Is that what this article is going to do?
Right, and it's really this article just is describing examples of what they think is convergent evolution. Now, I ran across this when we were going to the Desert Botanical Gardens in Phoenix. I came across a display where they showed examples of agave, which is native to uh, Central America and
Okay.
parts of North America, and aloes, which is that comes from the African continent. And these two are totally unrelated in terms of genetics, but in terms of morphology, they perform similar things. And I like to liken it to the uh, Derek Marshall's creation function because when they grow, they do it in a logarithmic spiral pattern.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Yeah, so
Interesting.
it just shows that that whole thing he calls the creation function is embedded in a lot of life, and I
Doug, does this go back to what is a common creation statement or belief? Is it's not about a common ancestor, it's really about a common designer utilizing things that work in a similar environments. Okay. In other words, God created the world
mm-hmm,
to have oxygen, water, chlorophyll, and DNA. All these things are all similar, but this and because this happens, you would expect to see different kinds of genetic animals and plants, things that are alive that basically duplicate similar functions, but entirely unrelated to really the creature. We have this because in the present, Doug, we have genetic information,
mm-hmm.
but the most of the evolutionary scenarios are based upon the fossil record, where there's no real genetics to base anything on, so they can make up what they want. But they're faced with the conundrum. In the present, we have, well, we've talked about this many times, Doug, the flying creatures, from an insect to a bat to a bird to a reptile to a mammal. I mean, we've got 4 or 5 different wing patterns, and they are not related at all. Okay.
Right.
And these kinds of
Flying
things,
fish,
what's that?
flying fish,
Well, yeah,
flying
that's a little
squirrels,
that's a
the
little,
little
well,
gliders there. But
more
you
gliders there. But
argue if
anyway,
you're an evolutionist that these flying squirrels are evolving into birds, or
exactly. Well,
and
that they've done this already. How many we got the flying reptiles, are these animals that they say they're dinosaurs evolving into birds. I saw a great article. This is a little bit off the thing. I hope it's not too far. But a guy, my son's boss, Joel, he put an article. It's on the Interest in Genesis website. A lot of these supposed dinosaurs that are evolving into birds because they got feathers or something are actually birds. They're not reptiles at all. The configuration of their arm is more of a bird rather than, but they restore them like a reptile. And I go, what the heck? And that's just one thing that sticks out in my mind. But I'm getting at, Doug, they're using morphological arguments that are not really consistent with genetic arguments at all when you get to see the stuff in the present. As I say, the wing thing. But they go through. I will say this article gave good a listing of 13 convergent, what they call convergent evolutionary. Doug, you want to go through some of those, or do you want to do something else first? I think it'd be kind of neat to go through some of those.
an example they give is the peregrine falcon, and they say that it's more closely related to parrots than it is to hawks and eagles, and yet the peregrine falcon performs a similar function than as hawks and eagles.
Exactly. I
And
would have never thought that myself. Yeah.
And so they may look like similar birds of prey, but they're very distantly related according to them. Now, the question is, does this argument really hold up, or is it just totally fallacious? In my mind, it's a false cause argument.
To
It's a,
me, it's an ad hoc explanation to explain something that they have no explanation for. They make up, we call it just so stories, made up stories, fabrications to justify something they already believe is true. It's almost the classical circular argument. Well, because we believe evolution is true, this happened, therefore that had to have happened this way, but there's no evidence for that. There's
Mhm.
no evidence that uh, these traits evolved over millions of years of period of time over several different reiterations. I mean, I read this thing here. Doug, are there traits that have evolved repeatedly? They talk about that. I call it stutter doctrine. Things have to happen over and over again because and it doesn't make any sense at all based on what we see in the present record. But to me, the genetics is what kills it, Doug. When you see things that have the same idea because the environments require, let's say, a flyer. You need certain things. They're flying, whether it's a bat, whether it's a pteranodon, or whether which is extinct, of course, but or whether it's a bird. These things all utilize the flying things, but they're genetically entirely different. They're not related at all. So they make up this thing called convergent evolution, where totally independent because of environmental factors and mutation that they develop the same thing. You know how hard it is for them to even come up with one successful evolutionary mutation? It's virtually impossible. And they come up with this many, many times. That's why they need the millions and millions of years of time. But even that's not enough to explain what we're seeing in the present. It's just not.
When I understood what happens during a mutation, usually, what it does is it substitutes a letter in the genetic code with another letter, and
Yes,
and because there's intelligence surrounding all this, there's repair mechanisms that go in and repair that substitution. But sometimes that difference it sticks. And some of it is actually intentional, is built-in variation within the genome that God put
yes.
there. And so you have to figure out that different confusion. But what is missing in the evolutionary explanation is the mind of our creator, who is the master programmer. He is the
The
one
programmer,
who
yes.
has
Amen.
who put together the genetic information and was able to code for these different features in the creatures. And so
These creature features, right?
creature
Okay.
features, yeah. And sort of like when I was a computer programmer, I would talk about future fancy features as part of the when I talked about what we're doing with the computer application. If you have the mindset of our creator, he is the one who has genetic codes for certain things that he would move around when he's doing his creative work on the and setting it up to perpetuate itself over the thousands of years of creation rather than the millions of years. The millions of years is a problem for evolutionists. They don't realize it. They can't hide behind it. But most of the things that have to happen or have to happen instantly, or they don't work.
And they don't happen at all. Yep.
They don't happen at all.
You
You
don't
know,
think, Doug, unless everything works, nothing works. Isn't that the way it kind of
that's
it's
correct.
kind of that way. That's not kind of that way, it is that way.
Right. And so to say, well, it has millions of years for the possibility of it happening, well, what happens is that over those millions of years, it's going to break down, it's going to destruct, and you could. I remember taking a biochemistry lab class where you take and isolate a a protein and put it in the solution, and you can watch it degrade before your
Mm.
very eyes because it breaks down, and you can see that there's a you can analyze it, and it's going into its separate components because it's not in life. Life is a non-equilibrium thermodynamic problem because you're continuously having a chemical reaction going on in life. And these hundreds and thousands of chemical reactions that make up life that happens to you every day when you ingest food. It breaks it down and uses it for parts in the body and distributes it in a network. And you have the DNA making RNA, the RNA making proteins, the proteins catalyzing the DNA process. And so it's all a circular, interdependent uh, being that's going on in life. And you have all the different organisms that God has created, making up life, uh, that have the similar processes going on in life, but it's coding for different things. And so God, in His wisdom, He took the code for the bird's wing, and he designed a mammal bat wing that's has the same principles, and he has to still do the same thing, but it's using a mammalian instead of feathers. You got uh,
The arm of the bat is much different than a bird's arm, bird's wing, much, but they both utilize or are both able to fly. That to me is remarkable. Doug, like I said, this article you sent me, is a really good one, but the one thing you addressed this a little bit, of course, it's a non-starter for a creationist, especially a young earth creationist. Can convergent evolution happen millions of years apart? Well, since I don't believe in the millions of years, I'd say no, but that's the whole idea. They have these separations of time that seems to help them out. And you've already answered that question, Doug. It doesn't really help them at all because it doesn't really help them to have lots of time. But going into that, Doug, I'm kind of interested. They go into things like the swimming shape, sharks, dolphins, and ichthyosaurs. The reptile. And I mean, you've talked about things with we've talked about the whale, which is interesting, but this
mhm.
is the swimming shape. Yeah, and I look at these pictures they have out here. It's pretty neat. The ichthyosaur, the reconstruction of one, because we don't have any, as far as we know, alive today. Very similar, but yet one's a reptile and one's a mammal. Neither one of them are a fish, by the way, which is interesting. That's the third one. They have streamlined fish that do that as well. So, and then it goes into like an octopus and squid eyes in our eye. The similarities of that, and that what relationship do they have to us? You know, and it just goes on and on, Doug. It fascinates the heck out of me.
Mhm.
Just 13, they listed only 13. There's probably more, but it was very good the way they did that. The opposable thumb, Doug. How about that? You want to talk about that?
Yeah, we have, of course, monkeys have an opposable thumb and also opposable toes as well, you know.
Yeah, we don't have that.
We don't have that, and we have the koala that has an opposable thumb.
Yep.
Also, pandas have a similar one. It's a different design because they have use their feet mostly for walking, but they also have an opposable thumb on their feet, and so it's sort of you might ask the question, you know, how come God didn't design the creature that did everything? You know, how come he didn't have a flying porpoise or uh, you know, this is because he made these creatures.
The answer to me to that is God loves variety.
Right.
He loves, God, he is a creator. Every time I paint a picture, Doug, or create something, I'm just trying to imitate the greatest creator of all, and it's God, who's our Father. He's created everything, and he likes variety. It's like, Doug, why does he give us five senses, not just one that covers everything? Things do different things. He loves that. And to me, I love the fact that he loves that. It makes our experience in this world, broken as it is, fallen as it is,
Mhm.
still a rewarding, rich, and worthwhile experience to be on this life. So the opposable thumb is interesting because yeah, you might say they try to say, well, gorillas and chimpanzees are related to humans, but you can't get the panda and the koala to say that. No way. In fact, some respects, genetically, we're more like a pig than a chimpanzee. So I've read that too. So I don't know. You know what? Where that's why they can use a pig's heart in surgery because it's more like us than let's say a gorilla's heart or a chimpanzee's heart. But that's neither here nor there as far as that goes. But um, so Doug, we talked about the power of flight a little bit. But you've got yeah. In what how different is an insect to a bird? They both
They're
fly.
different, but they both fly, and they have the hummingbird, which flies a lot like the bumblebee.
Isn't it something? Yes. And yet, no one would say that they are related to. But if we only had, let's say, the fossil of a hummingbird and a fossil of a I don't know, I can't even think of something. Well, I think that's what they're doing with the a lot of these fossils with the raptors, the dinosaurs, the flying trying to make these dinosaurs evolving into birds. I think those dinosaurs, which is disappointing, Doug, because you know what that means? The Velociraptor in Jurassic Park is basically a bird.
Yeah,
Of course, you know what the size of a Velociraptor is, really? It's not that 6 foot big thing. There is a Utah raptor that's pretty good size, but it's the size of a turkey,
yeah.
which is a good sized bird, but it's no 6 foot marauder, like they put in the movies. But anyway, so well, moving on, Doug. What about? I don't know. It talks about the spiny the spines in different animals. What about those, like porcupines and echidnas and some of those other things or whatever?
Yeah, take an echidna, of course, is an egg-laying mammal, and it's
Yeah.
in Australia. But you also have anteaters in Africa that are huge, and you have the porcupines in Michigan, and you have uh, cactus.
That's another one. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That cactus is definitely a relationship to a porcupine. But you see, to an evolutionist, though, everything ultimately comes from a common ancestor.
Right.
But genetically, we know that just seems to there are lines of demarcation between even from a mammal to a reptile. They're just lines. I remember years ago I read a book. I can't remember but what was it? The Darwin and I can't remember what it was now. But they talk about these clear lines and they never go past them. And how they get past that, it's like they have to make up stories and they go back again to the fossil record because nothing in the present would allow you to say the things they're saying if they didn't already have a presupposition from the fossil record. That's what they're using to me, but which has no genetic link. And this present stuff, the genetic links are not compatible. They cannot, they don't cross. So what we have is an impasse here in the present, but it's totally solved by creationary viewpoints that we have a common designer who utilizes the same environments to create different kinds of animals with different unique characteristics that he himself created in situ in perfect harmony to start with, and from those perfect kinds they branch out because of variation within the genome that he programmed in, like you mentioned earlier. I think that's a fascinating thing that we've come up with over the years. It's really, and that environment indeed can have a factor on some of those variants happen. Like that's the long-billed finches and the short-billed finches and all these kinds of things happen for different environmental. But all that information was already programmed in the genetic code to start with. You know,
Right, yeah.
uh, yeah, and or the ability to adapt was already programmed in there in one form or another. I think that's what we have in the present, Doug.
And you have epigenetics, which is just the turn on, turn
Environment,
off mechanisms within the genome that
right?
activate or deactivate certain features of the things based upon environmental uh, causes, and that's confused with evolution, and it seems like they're using a lot of Lamarckian logic here, because
We like to call malarkey
right.
malarkey evolution. Kind of throwback to Joe Biden, man. Malarkey.
But what I was talking, the homology argument, I think, is really destroyed by these convergent evolution examples because they're exceptions. We know that they're not related, and yet they have these similar features. So how can you use that argument to justify a series of creatures of evolution, like the horse series or what we talked about last week, the whales? And
Yeah, speaking of the whales, Doug, how about the similarity of echolocation in bats and whales?
yeah, that's very interesting. How did that happen?
And so, yeah, there's a common designer makes so much more sense, especially in
Mhm.
light of the fact that unless everything works, really nothing works. It has to be all at the same time. To me, it's fascinating to the variety of the creation, even in our present world with so many species. And think, Doug, all over the centuries, how many species have gone extinct that we don't even have access to today? How
Right.
much much more variety in the past? Obviously before the flood, but even after the flood, when they start branching out. But since then, how many things have gone extinct in our historical memory? The dodo bird, the passenger pigeon, and the buffalo almost. The American bison almost went extinct. But we've seen a lot of this. The history of the world is not new things being created, which is what evolution demands, but
Mhm.
we see things that have been created going extinct. We see extinction is the norm, not new things happening. Okay, we see variety with the same kind. Like I say, from two dogs off a Noah Ark, or two dog kind, if you will. We have all the various varieties of dog that we have. From cocker spaniels, to big, to basset hounds, to corgis, to whatever you name it. German shepherds. And it's that way with everything in life, it seems like. There's so many things we have that really indicate that God he made this world perfect. It was broken, yet the remnant and the love he still has for his people, for his creation, should still be seen, even in a judged world. That's why, Doug, the hope that we have in Jesus Christ, who's going to undo the effects of the curse, first spiritually and then ultimately physically. That is a strong hope, and we see in the physical record of the variety of creatures, even now, even though death is still a factor right now, that will not be a factor in the age to come. But we see the variety and the joy and the creativeness in the present world even gives me so much hope for the future.
Yeah,
Gives
it's
me a joy.
amazing. If you take a look at creatures like the red panda and the raccoon.
Yeah.
That's sort of a convergent evolution example, but the red panda, of course, is uh, quite distant from the from where the raccoons live, and so then you have the panda itself. Is that a bear or is it a
I know it doesn't look anything like it, you know. And then of course I think God has a good sense of humor with the duck-billed platypus.
platypus? I remember going into the MSU museum and seeing an example of the aardvark, and it was funny because it said the aardvark is an obscure mammalian genus that's not related to anything. And
Oh, is that right?
yeah, and so they really have no idea, what the aardvark is related to. It's a it looks like a pig with the long ears, donkey.
Yeah.
Then
It is an odd looking, weird duck thing. There's no doubt about that.
you have the pangolin, which is sort of like a uh, armadillo in a way. It's got an armor plating and all around it, but
But it's not related. But is it related to the armadillo? I don't think it's
no,
related to. Yeah, it's
no, they
totally
don't
different.
know what this is related to, But they have all these different things that they have to figure out, the origin of sucking parts, the of like the mosquito and the flea and the
Oh yeah, the bloodsuckers. Yeah, how about the bloodsuckers? You got a vampire bat.
yeah.
You got the ticks or the bed bug or whatever, the mosquito. Why these? They're all different things, but they utilize blood. I mean, I will tell you this is interesting. The scripture tells you blood is the life,
Mhm.
and Jesus had to give his own blood. I do not understand that, Doug. I take that as an axiom. Why blood in God's economy is so important, but it's very consistent throughout the entire testimony of Scripture. From Adam's when Adam and Eve sinned, and the first thing that covered them was blood was animal skins, indicating something had to be sacrificed by blood, and of
Mhm.
course the ultimate sacrifice was Christ Himself. But these insects seem to have that propensity in a fallen world. They suck blood to give life. Jesus gave blood to give life.
Well, evolution goes by the survival of the fittest, but they cannot explain the arrival of the fittest, where the
Oh, that's good.
uh,
Yeah.
comes about, and
And they still, Doug, there's no mechanism for all of this supposed conversion evolution. There seems to be what's the
it
mechanism?
supposes a Gaia type of God that seems to be over all everything, and they can't really avoid the divine even if they want to. It's kind of a
I know they can't avoid the words all everything they talk about. It's designed. It's done. They use words that smack of an intelligence of a creator. And
mhm,
I'm going, it's the old thing, the old thing where the scientists are striving for the truth. They climb this big mountain. They get to the very top, and the theologians are up there to meet them. God is already, He is the answer to that. But I think there's great joy in finding the mechanisms and the things of His creation. I think God takes great joy in us discovering things after Him. That was one of the great scientists of the past used to say, we're discovering His thoughts after Him. Wasn't that, I might have been Isaac Newton or somebody like that. I'm not really sure. And I think that's a great joy. We discover his thoughts after Him, whether it's in science, whether it's arts, whether it's creative endeavors, whether it's looking through His scriptures, and you find things that He's hidden out like Easter eggs for us to discover. I think He takes great joy in that, and I take great joy in the fact that He takes great joy in that.
well, we've run out of time, Rich. We'll see
All
you next
right.
time on Revolution Against Evolution.